Hi and welcome back. In this session we'll be taking techniques from the previous videos and applying them to create a clap effect. It's worth noting that while I'm focusing on a clap, you can apply these techniques to any sound that you find appropriate, be it snares, cymbals, or even non-percussive sounds such as synths and so on. We're not going to need much explaining in this session as we already know how the things like delay and EQ work, so feel free to just follow along with me, and again be sure to experiment with all sorts of different sounds using these techniques. So in my browser to the left here, we have a standard clap from a sample pack available on the Sonic Academy website. So let's drag it into the playlist to begin with. So this is simply a dry sample, but you'll find that within sample packs these days, many of these sounds have already been applied with various effects. So while this saves time, it doesn't allow for as much control over the sound. And I just want to go through the process of achieving some of the more generic clap effects that you hear in a lot of songs. So let's begin by linking it to a mixer track. And the clap I think is a little bit too abrasive to be used as an effect, so I think the first place to start here would be in terms of EQ and filtering. So let's load up a parametric EQ in the insert. If you're in a hurry, you could scroll to the list of native presets and choose something like the radio preset, for instance. And as you can see in here, this removes some of the harsher high end that wouldn't have been suitable for creating an effect, and it also gives it a boost in the mid region. So we're going to aim for a similar sound to what this preset gives us. So let's go back to the default EQ preset, and instead of going for convenience, let's see if we can shape the EQ in a similar fashion from scratch. Begin by high passing up to around just under the point where the clap's most prominent, and then I'll create a bit of a low pass there, maybe a steeper slope, and a boost somewhere between the mid and high mid maybe. Alright, so this sort of turns it from a standard drum sound into a more textural element, and I think some delay is probably now in order, so let's go ahead and add a delay to the second slot in the chain. But I'll actually show you FL Studio's other delay plugin, which is called Delay 2, and this is a much more simple delay, which is handy for edits that don't need much more than a small sort of dose of it. So first of all, I'm going to turn the time down to about 2, so it equals an eighth note delay. And it's worth noting that we don't need to use a send track for these effects, as we're not trying to preserve the original dry signal, and so placing the delay on the insert is just fine. Now, to create a more sort of panoramic sound, I'm going to offset the delay repeats slightly so that you hear them at separate times in the left and right channels. I'll also turn the feedback up slightly to have it ring out for longer, and the input volume down a bit. Now after the delay we could try reverb, so like before, let's load up FL's Reverb 2 on the slot below delay. I'll begin by turning the wet parameter to around 80% so that you can hear more of the reverb come through. Now I want to go straight to the decay function, but unlike before, I don't think we need to refer back to the delay time chart when you consider what sort of sound this is, so instead let's just play it by ear to get a feel for what sort of sounds good. So since this is a relatively long decay time, let's also increase the size of the simulated space to compensate. And now we can do a bit of reverb EQ, in particular removing the low and maybe boosting the high slightly. So that sounds pretty decent right now, so let's try to balance it in with the playlist, with the rest of the elements, and make any necessary adjustments. Still a bit too loud. So like I said before, feel free to experiment with the type of sound you use. It doesn't have to be a clap. And before we conclude this video, let me just quickly drag in a couple of different sounds to replace the clap and notice how they're affected by it. The good thing about this is that we don't have to do the whole process over again and can simply drag new sounds in on top of the current audio clip. So that concludes this section. In the next video we'll be taking a look at using EQ to cut certain frequencies. I'll see you there.